Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities in Miniatures. It's Friday, which means I bring to you yet another obscurity in literature. And maybe if you live on the other side of the pond in merry old England, or somewhere in that vicinity, then you might be a little bit more familiar with this, and this might not be as much of an obscurity as it is for us here in the States. And that is Dave Gibbons' reimagining of the Rogue Trooper from 2000 AD. Now, this is the War Machine Collected Edition, drawn by Will Simpson. I can't read today. And obviously written by Gibbons, who, came to fame as one of the early illustrators of Rogue Trooper. But this is War Machine, and this is not actually published by 2000 AD, or at least this edition. You'll notice this is part of Heavy Metal when it was under Kevin Eastman's ownership, and it was put out by Tundra when it still existed. Now, I loved Tundra's stuff. It was there right at the time that I was really getting interested in seeing what kind of comics were outside of the realm of superheroes. And this is copyright 1993. Interestingly enough, you'll see here it is still owned by Fleetway Publications. This is prior to Rebellion and the subsequent changing of the guard for 2000 AD. But as far as I know, this was originally serialized in the main prog, if I remember the terminology correctly. And so maybe more astute thrill seekers, if I remember, again, my 2000 AD terminology, might be able to, shed some better light on that whole situation. But yeah, so this was early 90s, and it is a bit of a departure from the original script. Now, if you want to read the original stuff, I recommend these big fat phone books. Maybe I can do a video on one of these someday in the future. But man, look at that. Look at that art. That is pure old school Dave Gibbons. Just the use of black and white. I love it. But yeah, so you can see here the size. Maybe you can see the size. A little bit larger. And one thing, if you are familiar with these heavy metal albums that Tundra was releasing, they stank. They were stanky. It has an awful smell. This one, not so much as some of the other books that I own. That crown belongs to The Upturned Stone by Scott Hampton, which I'm thinking I might have to go bust out around Halloween, because I remember that genuinely creeped me out as a kid when I read it at like age 13 or something. Anyway, right off the bat, we are greeted to nice, fully painted pages. Now, that wasn't that much of a rarity for both 2000 AD or heavy metal at that time. That was the big rage. This is post Simon Bisley doing his thing on Slain. Personally, I liked this take on the Rogue Trooper, on Friday, as he ends up being called. Doesn't have the sentient equipment like he did in the original serialization. I know this was kind of retconned later on. It's fun just trying to figure out where the original chapters might have ended. For you fans of 40K stuff, I mean, obviously there are some very obvious parallels in how things are designed. And whereas I thought the original always had a bit of a more World War II vibe, this one really felt more like Vietnam. I don't know what, it's just how there was such an indifference in the lives of the GIs in this. The GIs being genetic infantry, not government issued. They still have the Norts and I forget what the others are called in this. Actually, I don't think they are so much. But some really gorgeous art by Will Simpson. And interestingly enough, so I was reading up on him. While obviously I know he did have a fairly successful run on 2000 AD, ended up becoming one of the main designers in the background on Game of Thrones. That was an interesting little tidbit. I mean, all you gotta do is just throw the right hats on them, and you got like full-on what is it, Astra Militarum? Guard, Imperial Guard. And that's what they will always be. And I mean, 40K was all the rage this time anyways in the early 90s. So not that surprising that it would have had that familiarity to it. The story itself is pretty straightforward. You got Friday stranded on the planet, trying to get off. The members of his battalion, one by one, going extinct as they fight over basically nothing important until they have the big realization of the big bad. One thing that I never really cared for, and this is not a knock necessarily on Simpsons art, but just on 2000 AD of the early 90s in general. And I'm sure it comes down to deadlines and stuff, but there would always be these panels, and Bisley was just as guilty of this, I thought, where you'd have just like a straight color. These three panels I'm looking at especially. And there's just nothing happening there. It's just, the characters in the foreground. And I'm sure deadlines had a lot to do with it. And I know drawing backgrounds sucks. Nice, fun, gory details. I guess, definitely earns its spot in heavy metal. I vaguely recall seeing this. I want to say it was like in a special, like a newsstand special. Well, all heavy metal back in the day was newsstand anyway. At least that's how I would always get a hold of it. If and when the local newsstand, bookstores, magazine shops were willing to sell it to me. One of my favorites was the original Monster Massacre by Bisley. I want to say Pat Mills or Keith Giffen, or maybe both of them were involved in that. I may not have the original heavy metal issues anymore, but I'm pretty sure I have, what was it, Atomica Press, I think was the independent label that they put it out under. And then we have this nice 2-page splash at the very end. Friday just looking cool in all the muck and mire. And I know that, I don't know, but I know that there were quite a few other episodes. I'm trying to think of the words in English here. I want to say there were some subsequent episodes. I don't think this is everything. It's a good 80 pages or so, probably. Fairly hefty. Which probably would have been around the first main sequence. But I want to say that the Friday version hung around for a few years. Definitely, if you like the more vintage one, I want to say there's at least these two of these. These are out of print, sadly. They do have the Ultimate Collection, 2080 Ultimate Collection, currently running or being produced over the last 4 or 5 years, I think, through Hatchet, at least in the UK. But I'm sorry, getting a hold of this stuff in the States is a pain in the butt. At least like with the Rebellion era books, a lot of this ended up, getting into distribution through, what's it called, Diamond Previews or whatever it's called. There's some sweet Mike McMahon art. Was it Cam Kennedy did some stuff in here as well. Some of it's not as hot looking, but it's not bad. But yeah, I dig the old school look. C. Wilson, I'm not sure who they are, but they have a bit of a McMahon vibe to it. That's what I'm thinking of, at least. Oh yeah, no, that is Cam Kennedy in here. I thought that style looked familiar. Very British at times. Don't know how many of these other books I ever had. Most of these names don't look super familiar, but then again, these are all early 90s international album line, yeah. So, a bit of a trip down memory lane. I must have been in high school when myself or my brother in Japan picked this up. Whether or not we paid full price, I don't know. I like how while this would be considered a regular book in England, this is considered mature readers in the US. But hey, it's withstood the test of time. I don't really have any interesting links. I guess if you want to start hitting up Amazon for Rogue Trooper books, definitely not a bad one. It's all very self-contained. Obviously, like I said, there's stuff that came after it, but I think a lot of it ended up just kind of getting mushed back into the original storyline vein. I think they retconned it again, a few years after this, but fun stuff, good times, and definitely, for that 40K grimdark aesthetic, I think it was in full operation at this point. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane with me, and if you're interested, like I said, good luck in the hunting. I'm sure you could probably find this for a pretty reasonable price. Hopefully your copy won't be as stinky as mine is all these years later. Yeah. With that said, though, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.